NDA committed for the welfare of the laborer. We hope you will stand by that. With these words, I conclude. Thank you very much.
Shri Arun Jaitley.
Mr. Vice Chairman, sir, I am extremely grateful to you for having given me this opportunity to intervene in this debate. Sir, in the month of December last year, we had an occasion in this House.
Not replying, is intervening. He formally held this charge. Listen to
I am speaking as a member.
Please. नहीं आप कैसे समझ रहे हैं कि वो टेलीविजन के इंटरव्यू में रिप्ले करेंगे, वो और भी कुछ बोल सकते हैं, आप सुनिए. हाँ.
Sir, I am extremely grateful to you for having permitted me to intervene in this debate. In December last year was the last occasion when this Honourable House debated disinvestment at length. Various views have been expressed, and since in the last few months, this subject has been an important subject of debate, not only in this House, but also in the country on various forums. I think it is important also to realize that, as the Honourable Member was saying just now, what are the options available for the country irrespective of which government is in power? Since 1991, and I wish to correct here a popular impression which exists, that it was the current leader of opposition, Dr. Manmohan Singh, who first introduced this concept into our political economy. There was an interim government in 1991 prior to Dr. Manmohan Singh becoming the finance minister. It was headed by a very senior leader of the country, Shri Chandrasekhar ji, whose views also on this subject are well known. For the first time, disinvestment was introduced during that interim government. In fact, that interim government in its budget, the interim budget that it presented, and I quote from that budget, it has been decided that the government would disinvest up to 20% of its equity in selected public sector undertakings in favor of mutual funds and financial or investment institutions in the public sector. And then an amount was also indicated that would be realized during the course of that particular year. In July 1991, we had an industrial policy statement of the then Congress government. We had the successive budgets presented by Dr. Manmohan Singh, where targets were laid down in every budget. In 2 out of those 5 years, those targets were also achieved. And also it is important as to what the common minimum program of the United Front government had to say. Now, this was a program which was framed after the United Front government came to power, and it laid down an agenda for governance that also provided for disinvestment, and this 20% limit which the first government had said was not mentioned in that particular policy of the common minimum program. In fact, the exact quotation from the common minimum program is, the question of withdrawing from the public sector from non-core strategic areas will be carefully examined, subject, however, to assuring the workers and employees of job security, or in the alternative, opportunities for retaining and redeployment. The United Front government will establish a disinvestment commission to advise the government on these steps. Any decision to disinvest will be taken and implemented in a transparent manner. Now, I would certainly compliment the United Front government for having taken this a step further, for having established a disinvestment commission, and having laid down the terms of reference of that disinvestment commission. In fact, most of the cases which the present government is dealing with, the Department of Disinvestment, led by my very able colleague Mr. Shauri, is now dealing with, are those 50 undertakings, those 50 which were, some were referred later on, 58 are the recommendations for Disinvestment Commission available, but those 50 which were referred to the Disinvestment Commission by the United Front government itself. The first list of reference of the 40 PSUs was in September 1996, the second list in March 1997. And since one of the companies has been most referred in the debate yesterday and today, I must mention that the United Front government had a foresight that the first case that it referred to the Disinvestment Commission was Air India itself, which has been most mentioned in this particular house in the last 2 days. Once out of power, It is very easy.
What was the recommendation of the Disinvestment Commission on Air India?
Yes, the recommendation of the Disinvestment Commission in reference to Air India was with regard to, there are marginal differences between what the government has decided and what the Disinvestment Commission had said, but 40% disinvestment, 40% disinvestment, I'm sorry, I will correct you, was one of the recommendations of the Disinvestment Commission in reference to Air India, except that they wanted 40% disinvestment by virtue of issuance of extra shares of the company itself. Therefore, what the government has done is not a complete variation. We have added two other aspects to it. We have in fact done something which at least the left parties must support us. For the first time in India, we have introduced the scheme of the employee stock option, which is sharing the corporate wealth with the employees itself. Never in the past has it been done. This is one addition which we have made to the recommendations of the Disinvestment Commission itself. So several questions will arise, and I must take on from what Shri R.P. Goenka had said. And he is, besides being a member of this house, he has a practical experience of business. He knows how the market operates. He said, if you go about investing, and this is directly contrary to what Mr. Mukherjee said yesterday, 2%, 8% and 10% small disinvestment in small lots, you will not get the value for the government assets. I am not standing here to say that what was done in the past from 1991 to 1997 was wrong. I am not for a moment saying that. I would in fact compliment the present leader of opposition that at least in 1991 he had the courage of conviction to start on a particular object. And at least during the first 9 years, the agenda which he laid down, which was expanded even when the United Front government was in power, and let me say so, there was no case of disinvestment of loss-making units even when the United Front was in power. You were only thinking in terms of VSNL, MTNL, GAIL. 5%, 7%. Yes, which now we realize, and as we have the words of wisdom of Mr. Rama Goenka, we never would get the best value for it. Historically it has been proved, and the reason is, and today the Economic Times carries an article, why are the shares of the public sector undertakings on the stock exchange listed at a value which is not very high compared even to the book value of those shares? There are several factors for which I don't want to go into them. But the experience has shown in this country, when what is ultimately the object of disinvestment, there is a unanimity in this house that the object of disinvestment is not and should never be to bridge the budgetary gap. That is not the object. If that is not the object, by just minority disinvestment of 2% and 8%, what is it which we were achieving? What we were achieving in the process is, I am grateful for you having said that, what we were achieving, we were not probably getting the best value for the shares. We were not, because the public sector shares on the stock market are not rated very high, nor were there other advantages of that disinvestment. One of the objects of disinvestment is that once you get a strategic partner, you should be able to get into that particular company. The company is going to remain. The object of disinvestment is revival of that unit, strengthening of that unit, saving of the jobs.
You are privatizing. Why don't you come and
Well,
say, I want to privatize?
well, in cases,
They did not have the courage to say they are privatizing. If you have the courage, come out. Yesterday also I gave you a challenge. You say, I want to change the ownership. I want to privatize the public sector.
Mr. Mukherjee,
Do it.
you wanted to know.
Not only
You wanted to know
Sir,
whether we have the
please,
courage or
sir.
not. You wanted to know whether we have the courage or not.
Yes.
Please pick up the 1999 budget speech of Mr. Yashwant Sinha. He did use the word privatization. There is no question. There is no question of this government not having the courage. This government is the first government which has the courage of conviction to implement the economic reform process. There is no question of our double talk on this particular issue. Please read the entire speech.
We are now discussing strategic sell, not
Well,
disinvestment.
you are talking in terms of the policy of the government, as I will outline,
Yes.
has been very clear.
Please allow the minister.
Chairman, I am not yielding.
1 minute. If it is.
I am not yielding. If there are any questions after this, you will get your
Mr.
chance to please raise them.
Why
Therefore, you wanted to know whether this government
You are
has the
not
capacity.
replying
In
as a
last year's
minister,
budget
you are
speech
not
itself, this
member.
phrase was used. So there is therefore no question of this government being reluctant to use this particular phrase. The policy of the government is very clear today. We've had an experience in 39 companies. We went through a process of minority disinvestment. On an average in those 39 companies, we have disinvested to the extent, an average I am saying, 16% per company. Today you have to introspect and think back, analyze, did we get the best values of what we did in the last 10 years? Was there any improvement in the managerial abilities of that particular company? Was there a professional management also coming in, bringing in capital, bringing in new technology into those companies? And then, what are the larger objects of this particular process? This government very clearly decided, in relation to each public sector unit, our object is to see that the units survive. The policy is comprehensive. There are units in the strategic sector which are not going to be privatized or disinvested. There are other units where we will make a decision, and the decision to keep even certain non-strategic units into the public sector will be guided by several factors. Is the presence of a public sector unit required in the interest of a national economy? Yes, we will keep it in the public sector. Is it required as a countervailing force to prevent a private sector monopoly? If that is the case, we will keep it into the, even if it is non-strategic, we may still choose to keep it in the public sector. That is the policy of the government which we have repeatedly pronounced.
Why don't you case by case?
Well, I think we are not now debating upon mere formalities of an oral speech or a white paper. The policy is very clear. Therefore, we go into this question. And if it is to be, what about revival of units?
Please,
Well,
Mr. Roy, allow him to complete.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sabha. As far as the policy of revival and reconstruction is concerned, even the 2000 speech of the finance minister very clearly stated, we are going to revive those units as long as they are to be kept in the public sector. Well,
That unit,
But in every sentence you
units,
cannot-
home or privatized. What is the meaning of it? I do not understand.
Well,
the
let
point.
me-
I do
Mr.
not
Roy,
understand
sorry,
the
I
point.
can't
That's
allow you
why-
to seek clarification on every word. Please.
Well, if you choose not to understand, let me give you two illustrations which you have not chosen to acquaint yourself with. The Steel Authority of India, a very major reconstruction package has been announced by the government. HMT, a very major reconstruction package has been announced by this government, which you must be aware
Those will
of.
be privatized.
Therefore, I am sure that I have given you two
Those will be
illustrations.
privatized. Let me understand.
I have given you two illustrations, and therefore you would be very
Again, you
clear.
are making poetry. I couldn't understand. Nobody could understand.
Well, there are some people, let me say this, there are some people, if they choose not to understand, I really cannot help it. You wanted with units, I have given you those units. I was coming to this practice since yesterday a suggestion was made. Why are you going in for a process of strategic sale? Let me clarify. In all cases, we do not go in for a process of strategic sale. We are not intending to do so. The Disinvestment Commission, which was set up by the United Front government, has made several sets of recommendations. We start the process, we consider the recommendations of Disinvestment Commission, which the government has said are indeed very valuable as far as the government is concerned. Mr. Sibal was making a suggestion that you don't consult. Today there is no commission, and I'll come to the reason, I'll explain the reason what the government is doing about the Disinvestment Commission. Yeah, the minister will do that, but the policy of the government is very clear in this particular matter. The Disinvestment Commission has made some very valuable suggestions. The government determines what is the larger roadmap of each particular PSU. Whether the presence of this PSU in the governmental sector is required or not required. And it is no policy. At times the criticism is made, why are you not going in for a big ticket privatization? Why don't you go and first privatize the lucrative companies, the blue chip companies? That is one criticism we face. The second criticism we face is, why is it that you are including a large number of loss-making units? Today a comment was made, which are the loss-making units? The decisions which we have taken, with one disinvestment privatization has taken place. There are 18 other cases which have been cleared, which are pending before the government. This includes a large number of cases which are loss-making. It includes marginal cases. It includes some profit-making companies also. The object of this whole process is that units which are suffering losses, units which are moving towards closure, units where future is threatened, should we now start saying, as the honorable member was just now mentioning, We need so much money. A suggestion was made, well, 4 billion should be was invested by Air France into 4 billion into Air France. Should we now tell the taxpayers of India that to revive a particular unit, there are a few million or billion, as Mr. Sibal prefers to enlarge the figure, we want to raise these taxes upon you, or we tell the people we are going to cut down your subsidies because we have to subsidize a particular business. It's a
It was expansion of the Air France fleet.
In any case,
that 4 billion was not for
Mr.
revival.
Sibal, it would be. I am grateful to you. In any case, as the honourable member from the DMK just now mentioned, the option is very clear. The size of the revenue and the money is available before the government is very clear. Either you are going to use this monies for a developmental process in the social sector, or you are going to pick up a few million or billion out of them and say, well, these...
Privatize the profit-making company. You agree at least to that point?
Well, I'll certainly come to that question also. I have not completed my speech. Or we tell the taxpayers, well, your money which has come for this particular purpose is now going to be utilized for funding the losses which the government has suffered in the course of running all these businesses. The government has to take a conscious decision. The decision has to be in the interest of the overall economy. The decision has to be in the interest of the social sector. The decision has to be in the interest of the particular unit. And a large number of them are in areas where private sector already does exist. I can come out with figures. I need not go down where the past policy has cost us so much. I'm not analyzing the past policy of the last 10 years or so, or even before that. I would straight away concede what the honourable member here said. At a time when they were set up, there was a historical role a large number of these units had to perform. But today, to come up and start creating a distinction, well, I'm glad my learned friend from the CPM says, I am not on the loss-making ones. So one half of them, I do not know whether you have given up the objection or whether you are still sticking to it. But one half of them, or at least 120 odd, which are loss-making one, nobody has very seriously questioned as far as those are concerned. Well, let me tell you state by state. Let me tell you state by state. Let me tell you state by state, you will be glad to listen, that it is not merely the prerogative of the central government as far as national economy is concerned. We have 236 units in the central government. We have units in every state. I was reading last week, the Punjab government has decided also to set up a disinvestment commission. The Haryana government announced its decision last week. The Karnataka government is in the process. The Andhra Pradesh government.
Deficits, you know that.
Pardon?
That's because of the budgetary deficit at the state level.
Mr. Sibal, well, that is not merely because of the budgetary deficits. I trust that the state governments are also interested in seeing to it that the loss-making units are revived, because closure is something they don't favor.
If you kindly yield for a minute, if you yield.
I was coming to West Bengal government.
For a minute,
Mr. Roy, please, if he's not yielding, please.
I was coming to the West Bengal government.
I know, he is a good lawyer, you cannot do it. You are a skilled worker, you cannot do it.
There is an area even where the West Bengal government is looking for a management partner. You know that. The West Bengal government is also looking for a management partner because it realizes there are areas.
For a minute, if you will, you are a great man. I am a labor, work in a public sector factory. If you yield for a minute, point is that disinvestment commissions was constituted by the United Front government, no doubt of it. But before that para, United Front government made number of recommendations. However, committee was constituted. After all, that committee is a committee of the bureaucrats, means several recommendations. And in that recommendation, they have dealt with 2.8 lakh crores of capital assets. Do you think that country, nation can go ahead, implemented that report of the bureaucrats without discussing it length in the House, without taking the consent of the people? That is my humble question before you.
Well, I am very grateful to the honourable member for having raised this issue. There is absolutely no question of there being any issue which should not be debated in this House.
Disinvestment Commission never been debated in this House. Never been brought before this House. And this
We've
No,
had,
No, he has yielded and you made your point, please.
we've had, I thought the Disinvestment Commission and its recommendations were being cited against us as a mantra. When we said, well, that is the basis where we start considering it, and that's a commission which the United Front government set up. Now the question which is raised, it was not being debated, it has not been debated in the House. This House, sir, on several occasions had an opportunity to discuss the subject of disinvestment, including the reports of the Disinvestment Commission. Every page of it is open for discussion even today.
Late before this House.
Every page of it is open for discussion. Nobody has prevented a discussion on the issue of the Disinvestment Commission. Therefore, the question which arises today is, what is the larger purpose of the disinvestment or the privatization process? As I said, in some cases, we look for a strategic partner because there are certain advantages to it. The government gets the best value, you get a professional management, you get a partner who will make investment and revive those units. There are some cases where you may want to disinvest, but you may feel that the larger interest of the economy is that such a unit must not go into a single hand. And therefore, you can disinvest into the retail market so that the entire body of shareholders may acquire small shareholdings and have a professional management running it. Now, the Disinvestment Commission also, in the recommendations that it has made recommendations in 29 cases for strategic sale, in 8 cases for trade sale, that is into the market, offer of shares, employees and others in 5 cases, and in 11 cases it said you defer the whole process. Therefore, the professional body which was constituted, which went into the details in every case, also laid down areas where you must offload shares into the market and not give control to any one individual, as against strategic partners, which we felt was a better option in the interest of the company, as also in the interest of getting larger revenue as far as the state was concerned. Last Monday, sir, a question was raised in this House, and I had indicated when somebody said change the name disinvestment. I really admire the foresight of the honorable member, because it is not a process by which you are closing down a unit. It is a process by units which are moving towards sickness you are trying to save. Units which are loss-making you are trying to revive, get investment into them, get a professional management into them. Units which are facing increasing competition today. When you see the larger roadmap of the unit, today it may be in a profit. It may fetch you a particular value. But in view of the competition areas, after the liberalization process increasing, monopolies coming to an end, state monopolies coming to an end, regulatory frameworks coming to an end, 5 years from today we may foresee that unit, either the values go down or the unit probably getting into some trouble. Therefore, just saying that today it is formally in a profit is really not the criteria. You have to take the larger interest in the long term of the unit, as also the economy and the workmen into mind, before you decide as to what to do with that particular unit. There are several reasons, sir, why successive governments, including the interim government of 1991, including the Congress government for 5 years, they initiated this particular policy. There is a basic question. After the liberalization process, where private sector has come into a lot of businesses, in most businesses, in fact, in a big way, should the taxpayers' money be locked into those businesses, or should you bring the taxpayers' money and spend it into the social sectors, where the governmental priority must be the first? Or should you go to the taxpayer and say, I can't give you irrigation, I can't give you hospitals, I can't give you educational institutions because my money is lying locked in businesses, even though you have a large private sector which is waiting to step into those businesses. The object of disinvestment process is that you try and introduce a professional management into the particular unit, you bring in more investment into the unit, you make it competitive. Now, several illustrations are being given. Air India is a case which is mentioned, and Shri Ramu Walia was saying, he was raising several questions of relating to sovereignty. I am not merely going by the world precedent that 35 out of the 50 major airlines in the world today are private. I am not going by the precedent. Every country has its own value systems. Air India has been very dear to us. Air India has to be saved. But we must also realize that whereas Air India must be saved from this loss-making trend which has started, we must adopt a policy in the context of Air India which is also a pro-consumer policy. With the decline in performance, have we even considered how our own consumers are suffering? Today we have a 25 million diaspora living outside India, Indians traveling outside. Have we tried to compare various foreign airlines? Air India was a great airline at one point of time. In the last few years, its performance has dipped. The kind of tariffs our consumers are having to pay. I was studying figures. A major airlines which commands a lot of traffic in and out of India to Europe, per kilometerage is charging our consumers, our travelers coming into India and out of India, almost 2.5 times per kilometer the fare that it charges between Europe and the United States. Why do people coming into India and going out of India have to pay a 2.5 times larger fare? And the reason is very clear. There is little competition here. You will get a choice of 10 different airlines on that route. There is larger competition, the prices come down. So when the honorable member was saying, when the honorable member from the
respective governments are subsidizing.
Just one minor point. Do you know how much of subsidy the British government gives to Concorde? And is there any competition for Concorde?
Well, I don't think, with utmost respect to you,
All the international airlines.
I don't think, with utmost respect, that the situation of our economy is such that to the richest niche of traveler who travels by a Concorde, the government of India must think in terms of giving subsidy for his travel. That is not. That is neither good politics nor good economics.
What is the recommendation of the Disinvestment Commission as far as Air India is concerned to get a better price?
Yes, we have considered those recommendations.
That you should invest first
Yes,
1,000 crores and
we
then
have.
go for
Let me,
So
with
that you
utmost
should
respect,
clarify.
we have considered those recommendations.
Sir, he should not clarify. He's not a minister. He's a member. He should speak. How
Yes,
can
yes.
he clarify? He's
No,
not
but
You are asking a clarification from
You
me
are
and then you are
seeking
preventing
clarification
my
after
for a
clarification.
I'm sure Mr. Shori knows more
Now,
economics
Mr.
than me.
Jaitley is intervening, please.
When
Mr.
he's
Jaitley is
trying to
intervening. His time is also limited. He has to conclude now.
Yeah, I'll conclude
Already
in-
you have
I'll conclude in 2
crossed the
minutes,
limit.
sir. May I just say that,
And
sir?
further clarification will be made by Mr. Jaitley. I'm sorry.
May I,
Minister concerned.
may I just say that, sir? There are several aspects which a government has to take into consideration. When you say we disagreed on the Air India, I mentioned a case we disagreed on the issue. We added the issue of ESOPs, the employed stock option. One last question, and I'm sure Mr. Shori will deal with the rest of the points. And he has several points to respond to. As far as the interest of the workmen is concerned, the government has very clearly said, we are trying to revive PSUs which are required to be in the public sector. I have given illustrations. There are cases where the best interest of the unit is served by a disinvestment or a privatization process. We are going in for privatization. The process is always going to be a very transparent bidding process. There are no private negotiations involved in this. And as far as the interest of the workmen is concerned, the interest of the workmen in the first instance is going to be protected when we try and save most of these units. This government has already announced a VRS package, which is till date the most attractive VRS package any government has announced in India. We have for the first time initiating a process by sharing the corporate wealth with the workmen who helped to create it by giving a scheme of ESOPs. In the agreements that we enter into, even in cases of strategic sales, we make sure that the government, we've done one case so far, and we've adequately provided there that the perception of both parties, the government and the strategic partner, is that no retrenchment will be required. Even when in some cases of overstaffing, we try to see to it that the economic package which is available to the employee is such that it will even soften the blow as far as the employee may visualize. There are cases when the honorable member said, why did you disagree? Have we realized when we added the ESOP formulation, as far as Air India employees is concerned, the largest Air India union has made a statement supporting the privatization of the Air India and the disinvestment of the 40% process. I would therefore only urge this, sir. The government will take into account the overall interest of the economy. It has been taking into account the interest of the unit, the interest of the employees. This actually is a process of revival of these units. This is the only, and that is the reason why some who criticize here, when they come into power in the states, are in the process of resorting to the same policy which the present government is today accepting. And as the honorable member from DMK suggested, we have to look for better alternatives if there are any. And in the absence of any, perhaps the policy of the government today is unquestionable. Thank you.
Mr. Sanjay Nirupam.
It's not that he said.
Nirupam.
मुझे लगता है डिसइन्वेस्टमेंट की पॉलिसी पर किसी को ऐतराज नहीं है।
रिवाइवल का, क्योंकि जो आप कहते रहे हैं,
अगर ऐतराज है तो डिसइन्वेस्टमेंट के तरीके पे, उस तरफ से शुरुआत हुई, इस तरफ से उस पूरी प्रक्रिया को आगे बढ़ाया जा रहा है। मंत्री महोदय ने अभी अपने भाषण, सॉरी मंत्री हैं लेकिन अभी एक सदस्य के नाते बोल रहे थे, जेटली साहब।
मंत्री हैं वो, इस
हाँ,
विभाग के नहीं है लेकिन मंत्री तो हैं।
उन्होंने अपने भाषण के आखिर में कहा कि भाई अलग अलग पब्लिक सेक्टर को रिवाइव करने के लिए डिसइन्वेस्टमेंट हो रहा है, हम विश्वास करते हैं उनकी बात पे। लेकिन जब वित्त मंत्री महोदय ने अपने बजट का भाषण दिया तो उनका कहना यह था कि 10,000 करोड़ विल बी जनरेटेड थ्रू डिसइन्वेस्टमेंट प्रोसेस। फॉर व्हाट, आई डोंट नो। जब अलग अलग पब्लिक सेक्टर के रिवाइवल के लिए थोड़ा थोड़ा डिसइन्वेस्टमेंट किया जा रहा है तो 10,000 करोड़ का टारगेट क्यों रखा गया? यह कहीं ना कहीं शक पैदा कर रहा है। डिसइन्वेस्टमेंट का मुख्य मुद्दा, मुख्य कारण जो बताया जाता है वो एक कि सारी कंपनियां बीमार पड़ गई हैं, घाटे में चल रही हैं, घाटे की कंपनियों को बेच देना चाहिए, उसका डिसइन्वेस्टमेंट करना चाहिए। फिर मेरे मन में सवाल उठता है कि फिर जो मुनाफे की कंपनियां उनको क्यों बेच रहे हैं? इस मुद्दे पे बहुत सारे अपने माननीय सदस्यों ने बोला है। जेटली साहब के जवाब में थोड़ी सी बात निकल के आ रही थी कि बहुत ज्यादा जो मुनाफे की कंपनियां उनके बारे में हम सोचेंगे, पुनर्विचार करेंगे। लेकिन अभी जो 23 जून को जो मीटिंग हुई थी कैबिनेट कमिटी ऑन डिसइन्वेस्टमेंट, जिस मीटिंग में मैंने सुना काफी शोर शराबा हुआ, उस बैठक में, उस कैबिनेट कमेटी की उस बैठक में ऐसे बहुत सारे पीएसयू एजेंडे पर रखे गए जो आज भी प्रॉफिट मेकिंग हैं। फॉर एग्जांपल एमटीएनएल, ओएनजीसी, राम भाऊ इधर ही थे कहीं पे, ओएनजीसी, बीएसएनएल, ये सारी प्रॉफिट मेकिंग कंपनीज है। इनको क्या तो ये कहीं ना कहीं शक पैदा करता है, कहीं ना कहीं सवाल खड़े कर रहा है। ये सारी जो एक्टिविटीज हैं, सारी जो गतिविधियां हैं, उससे एक मन में सवाल पैदा हो रहा है। और सिर्फ एक मेंबर या किसी सीपीए में या इधर उधर नहीं, आम आदमी के मन में सवाल पैदा हो रहा है कि ये क्या हो रहा है आखिर। तो आम आदमी के मन में जो सवाल पैदा हो रहा है उसका जवाब तो हमें देना पड़ेगा। और अरुण जी से बहुत ज्यादा उम्मीद है हमें, दोनों अरुण जी से, किन सवालों का जवाब हमें आज नहीं तो कल देना पड़ेगा। हमारे अंदर एक अकाउंटेबिलिटी की बात है। ये घाटे की कंपनियां हम बेचना चाह रहे हैं, फिर सबसे बड़ा सवाल तो घाटे में क्यों आ गई कंपनियां। वीरेंद्र जी ने बजटरी सपोर्ट की बात कही थी, मैं भी कुछ फिगर्स लेकर बैठा हुआ था। 1990 में हमारे जितने पब्लिक सेक्टर यूनिट्स थी उनको सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट ने जो बजटरी सपोर्ट दिया वो 32% था, और वो 1995 में घट के 13% हो गया, 13% हो गया। अब बजटरी सपोर्ट सिर्फ कंपनी को चलाने के लिए नहीं, उन कंपनियों के ऊपर क्या क्या जिम्मेदारी है ये भी देखिए। ये कहना बहुत आसान है कि भाई सोशल सेक्टर में हमको पैसा खर्चा करना चाहिए। एयर इंडिया को 1000 करोड़ हम क्यों दें? वो एक कमर्शियल ग्रुप है, कमर्शियल कंपनी है। इससे बढ़िया हम गरीबी दूर करने के लिए, चिकित्सा सुविधा मुहैया कराने के लिए, स्कूल बनाने के लिए उस पर पैसा खर्चा करें। लेकिन हम ये भूल रहे हैं कि बहुत सारे ऐसे पब्लिक सेक्टर यूनिट्स हैं हमारे देश में जिनका सोशल सेक्टर में बहुत बड़ा योगदान रहा है। भिलाई स्टील कंपनी सामने है, पूरा भिलाई शहर भिलाई स्टील कंपनी चलाती है। भिलाई स्टील प्लांट पूरा भिलाई शहर चलाता है। उतना वेल डिजाइंड, वेल गवर्न्ड सिटी मेरे ख्याल से हिंदुस्तान में बहुत कम है। 20 लाख लोगों को हमारे पब्लिक सेक्टर ने रोजगार दिया। यह क्या सोशल सेक्टर में कोई काम नहीं है? रोजगार दिया गया 20 लाख लोगों को। जिस दिन हम इन कंपनियों को दूसरे लोगों के हाथ में दे देंगे, प्राइवेट सेक्टर के हाथ में दे देंगे, उस दिन इन लोगों को रोजगार देने की गारंटी कौन देगा? सॉरी जी, हमारे एनडीए का जो एक कॉमन मिनिमम प्रोग्राम है, जो एक गवर्नेंस फॉर एजेंडा है, एजेंडा फॉर गवर्नेंस है, उसमें साफ साफ कहा गया है कि हम रोजगार देने के लिए वचनबद्ध हैं। मेरे ख्याल से एक फिगर भी तय किया गया 4 करोड़ लोगों को। अगर हम इस तरह से डिसइन्वेस्टमेंट करते जाएंगे तो उनके रोजगार का प्रश्न उठेगा। वीआरएस एक बहुत बड़ा जवाब हमारे सामने है, एक हथियार बन गया वीआरएस।